So this unfindable objects inquiry can seem sort of daunting at first. It can for some people, but it's just a matter of getting used to what it is that I'm doing. And once you get used to it, it's like any tool. Once you know how to use a tool, it becomes second nature. And it really penetrates through the belief in separation, if you get the hang of it. In the first video, we talked about the self. On the second one, we're talking just about other. Because here's the thing, again, after meeting with people so many years, these people bring to me this insight, many of them, not everybody, that they've seen through the self, that they've had this wonderful realization, but that when they go home at night, or when they're dealing with their boss, that in relationship they're experiencing all sorts of issues, and they keep experiencing the conflict, keep experiencing the seeking to change other people, or whatever other stuff shows up. And, you know, you can do psychoanalysis on that stuff, or you can continue to try to look at and see if there's a self. But the point is, as long as you really believe that there's a separate, inherent other out there, it's almost like you're just inviting conflict because of the belief system. And this is why I often say that seeing through self is not enough, because there have been people who see through self, but then think that their perception presents an objective, separate others everywhere. And so what it is like they're projecting another, and then boxing it or being in conflict with it, believing that it's a real thing, that it has nothing to do with their own interpretation and feelings. And so when you start to do this inquiry on other, the whole idea of an objective, separate other just falls apart. It's just like that. And well, it might not be like that, but but just like everything, you can't intellectualize this. You have to go through the inquiry with me. So let's just start. You got to do it with your own person in your life, your spouse, your boss. You can even do it with an entity like the government or organized religion or this particular hate group or whatever, this country. Whatever other is out there as a group, a thing, anything, person. Let's just start with the person. Let's say that I have a wife named Jenny, and Jenny is self-centered, let's say she's complains a lot, and she's always on my case. She's always nagging me. Let's say that causes a lot of conflict on relationship, because here I am in a relationship with this person, constantly playing the movie of how Jenny is, like she's self-centered, and replaying her complaints and her nagging. And then every time she complains or nags, it's like there's this reaction. Again, it's an emotional reaction in the body, and it feels almost physical. There's a physical sense of separation. There's Jenny and there's me. So whatever you're experiencing in yourself, you can do the the self inquiry that we did on the first video. But what happens in relationship is something different in a way. It's like, what is Jenny? So the question is, we should be able to find Jenny just as we try to find a self. So when we go look for her, we use the same rules. So is the word Jenny? Look at the word as it's typed out in your head. You have to substitute your own person here or thing. Look at the word Jenny. Is that word, those letters, is that her? So a lot of times people say, no, that's not her, that's just a word, but it seems to point to her. So that's what we're trying to find, the thing that it points to. We're trying to find that real, apparently real, objectively separate person. So is the word Jenny her? No, that's just a name. So again, let that relax, and let's move to the next thing. And now we pull up a memory of the last time Jenny was complaining to me. And so I have this memory now. Remember, there are words or pictures. So there's a picture of her, and then I can hear her words complaining about me or whatever. is that picture in my mind, is that her? So because this involves really sticky issues, that picture may feel like her because, again, whenever a thought feels like a person or an object, either the self or another, it just means there's something going on below the neck, a feeling or a sensation which isn't really conscious. And so we go into the body to see what's going on when you're conjuring up that image, that memory of her complaining, what's going on in the body. And then you can feel it's like a heat. It's like anger. I'm upset with her and I can feel that anger sort of boiling in there. So again, when you get into the body, you have to deal with the labels, the descriptive words first. Word like anger, pull it up. A-N-G-E-R. Is the word anger typed out in your head? Is that her? Clearly no, it's just this word. But it seems to be, it's not her, but it seems to point to something that's tied to her, like a feeling in the body. So what I want to do is I want to relax the image of her complaining, and I want to relax the word anger and all other words and images. And now there's the feeling of anger, and I just let that be there as it is, without labels. And again, it might morph, it might change. But eventually, when you just relax into it without emphasizing words or labels, the energy just goes like this. It just kind of relaxes, because there's no story tied to it. And as it begins to relax when you're sitting there, it may take some time just to relax into that for a second. I'm kind of moving through this. But as it begins to relax, you just ask the simple question, is that her? And you can see it's an energy. It's not her. So that relaxes. And once again, let me go back to this. If a feeling feels like an object, in this case the object is her, it just means there's a thought that is a word or a picture that comes with the feeling. It sort of snuck in on you. So there's a feeling of anger, and maybe in the back of your mind there was just this other memory of another time that she was complaining or nagging you that snuck in there with and started to weld together with the anger as you were trying to feel the anger. So you just want to look in your experience and say, there's that memory. This other memory snuck in. And then you look directly at that memory and you see that that's just a picture, that's not her. And you relax that and then go back into the feeling. Then when you've got the feeling itself just sort of isolated in your experience, you let that be as it is. Then you can see it's just a feeling, it's not her. Then you want to go back to the original memory or some other memory that feels like her. Let's just go back to the original memory that we had of her complaining. Once you've gone through the body and experienced the emotion directly, it sort of takes the hook out of the memory. So look back at the memory and you can see now that it's just a picture. But you can ask yourself, is that it? But now it's more clearly just a picture. It's not her, it's a picture. So what it does, it forces you to both see that there are definitely words and pictures happening, but none of the words and pictures are a person. And there are definitely feelings and sensations in the body, but those are not a separate person. Those are feelings and sensations. So go through each one of them, and what happens is that the emptiness of the other person starts to show up, because what you thought was a person was really just a bunch of words and pictures welded together with emotions and sensations, which gave you a sense of the solidity of this separate person. But as you go through each one of those, asking, is that her? And seeing that it's not, it's like you're tweaking apart that welded energy, and it just starts to appear empty, as if there's nobody on the other side. And what happens is your experience opens up. It's more loving, it's more compassionate, it's more open, more peaceful, definitely more accepting, because the solidity of that separation is seen through. When you get to, there can still be this inherent sense that beyond my thoughts about her complaining and my story type thoughts and feelings, that there's just still this separate person out there. What you do though is you imagine and look in your mind's eyes that you still have this picture of her. It's like a mental image of her sitting somewhere right now doing something, and you can just see that that's a picture. And you didn't marry that picture. You see, what you thought you married was this separate person. It's not that picture in your mind. If you look at that picture, it's just a thought. You let it relax. What this does is it opens up the conceptual version of your spouse, and you start to experience your spouse more directly when you're with her, just more like a present experience of her, without all the heavy story stuff. You can take this very, very deeply, though. Like, for example, even when you're in the company of Jenny, sitting there, you can see that even then there's no separate self, because there's still just our memories coming through, pictures as you're looking at her, and then feelings and thoughts, and none of them by themselves are her. Even if you say, well, it's a collection of all those thoughts, you can say, is the thought, it's a collection of all those thoughts, is that thought her? You can see it's just another thought. And there's a relaxation. And then you're with what you think is the physical self, but you can look there, that when you're just looking at the colors of her flesh, and or maybe even the feel of her, that the sensation of vision or color, or even the tactile sensation of touch, is not a separate person. It's just the tactile sensation of touch or vision. The memories have to be there of who she is and the feelings in order to get the experience of the separate person. When there aren't any memories and thoughts of her, there's just this color, this perception, this perception of color or the sensation of touch without the imposing of all of the story thoughts. So you can see that the tactile sensation of touch doesn't carry a story with it. It's just softness. It's not her. It's just the sensation of softness. And the vision of color or shape itself is not her. It's just color or shape appearing directly to perception. Again, you have to have all the stories of who she is, her name, and the stories about her being complaining or whatever, even good stories. You have to have all that to really feel like she's a separate person. When all that peels away and you're experiencing something more directly without all those stories, you get down to very basic things and nothing feels like a separate person. You have to investigate it, though, especially if you have a partner who's open. You can touch the person and see the fingers aren't thinking. They're just giving you the sensation of touch. There's no story of a separate person there in the fingers. All that happens through mind and memory and feeling. What that does is it just further releases the sense of an inherent physical separate other there. So everything just appears more and more lighter. When you're with the person, there's just a lightness to the person. One more thing before we go. What's the value of going that deeply when you get into just color and shape, seeing that color is not a person and shape is not a person and tactile sensation is not a person? Even the sound of someone's voice is not a person, it's just a sound. Listen to the sound of my voice by itself. It's just sound, it's hearing. It's not a person. The person gets built in by imagining images and memories and thoughts and feelings that go with it, and color and everything. The sound by itself is not a person. The point of going this deep is that the reason that people suffer in relationship is because it's like, imagine that I'm your spouse or your boss. When I walk into the room, when there's a sense of separation, it feels like I bring in all of the memories that you don't like about me. And all the feelings. It's almost like those thoughts and feelings are embedded in me, like I brought them in. But once you see that they're happening on your side, that it's this thought, that feeling, and that sensation, none of which are me, but are just individually thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Once you see through that, when I walk in the room, there's a lightness to me. It doesn't feel like your story of me is embedded in me anymore. So this form of this person is then empty. It's empty of all your conceptualization. It's empty of all your viewpoints. So there's a lightness. So then we can just be together without the heavy story of memory and all the feelings. There's just a lightness then to our experience. So it's like we rediscover each other here in the present moment.